Emma sat quietly in her small London flat on a cold Tuesday evening. Raindrops hit her window like tiny fingers tapping on glass. She was 30 years old and lived alone. Her flat was small but cozy, filled with art supplies and half-finished design work scattered across her desk. Empty teacups sat on every surface, showing how busy she had been trying to keep her mind occupied. 2 years had passed since her divorce from James. 2 long years of learning how to be alone again. 2 years of building walls around her heart to protect herself from more pain. Emma had worked very hard to create this quiet, safe life. She woke up each morning, made her tea, worked on her design projects, and went to bed early. It was simple and predictable, which was exactly what she needed after all the chaos of her marriage falling apart. The postman had come earlier that day, sliding letters through her door slot as he always did. Emma usually ignored the mail until evening, knowing it would just be bills or advertisements for things she did not need. But tonight, as she sat with her final cup of tea, she decided to sort through the small pile of envelopes. Bill after bill, advertisement after advertisement. Nothing interesting or important. Emma was almost finished when she saw it at the bottom of the pile. An elegant cream-colored envelope with her name written in handwriting that made her breath catch in her throat. She recognized that writing immediately. It was James's handwriting. Her hands began to shake as she picked up the envelope. Why would James be writing to her after 2 years of complete silence? They had agreed after the divorce to have no contact. It was easier that way, less painful for both of them. Emma's heart began to beat faster as she carefully opened the envelope, afraid of what she might find inside. What she found made her world stop completely. It was a wedding invitation. Beautiful, expensive, and formal. James Michael Harrison and Sophie Elizabeth Wells were getting married in 3 weeks at St. Mary's Church in Bath. Emma stared at the invitation, reading it over and over again, unable to believe what she was seeing. But then she found something else tucked inside the invitation. A small piece of paper with a handwritten note. Emma unfolded it with trembling fingers and read James's familiar writing. "Emma, I know this seems completely mad, but please come. There is something very important I need to tell you in person. I understand if you cannot, but it would mean everything to me if you were there. James." Emma dropped the invitation and note onto her coffee table and stared at them as if they might disappear. All the old pain came rushing back like a flood. The arguments, the tears, the feeling of not being good enough, the loneliness even when they were in the same room together. She had worked so hard to move past all of that. She had built a new life, a safe life, away from all those terrible feelings. Why would James want her at his wedding? What could he possibly need to tell her? And why did reading his note make her heart race with something that felt almost like hope? Emma was angry with herself for feeling anything at all. She should throw the invitation away and forget about it completely. She picked up her phone and called Lucy, her best friend who lived just 3 streets away. Lucy had been there through the worst parts of the divorce, bringing tea and tissues and listening to Emma cry for hours. "Lucy, you will not believe what just happened," Emma said when her friend answered. "What is it, love? You sound strange." Emma told her about the invitation and the note. There was silence on the other end of the phone for several seconds. "Are you completely mental?" Lucy finally said, her voice rising with concern. "Emma, why would you even consider this? Why would James invite you to watch him marry someone else? And why would you put yourself through that kind of pain?" Emma stared at the invitation while Lucy continued talking. Her friend was right, of course. It did seem completely crazy. Going to James's wedding would probably be one of the most difficult things she could possibly do. It would bring back all the old hurt and make her question everything she had worked to build over the past 2 years. But as Lucy spoke, Emma found herself not really listening. Something deep inside her, something quiet but insistent, was telling her that she needed to go. Maybe it was curiosity about what James needed to tell her. Maybe it was the part of her that had never really gotten closure from their marriage. Or maybe it was simply time to face the past once and for all, to stop running from the memories and the pain. "Lucy," Emma said, interrupting her friend's worried speech. "I think I have to go." "Emma, no. Please think about this carefully." But Emma had already made up her mind. For the first time in 2 years, she was going to do something that scared her. She was going to face James and whatever truth he needed to share. Maybe it would hurt, but maybe it would also finally set her free. Emma 3 days after receiving
her
the
wedding
wedding
London
invitation,
flat on a cold
Emma stood
Tuesday
in her
evening.
small London flat,
Raindrops
packing
hit her
old
window like
suitcase.
tiny fingers
Her
tapping
hands
on
moved
glass.
slowly.
She was
folding
30
clothes
years
she had
old
not
and
worn
lived
in
alone.
months. Her
She was
flat
nervous
small
about
but
returning
cozy,
to Bath,
filled with
the
art
town where she
supplies
had
and
grown up
half-finished
and where she had
design work
married James
scattered
5
across her
years ago.
desk. It was also the place where everything had fallen apart, showing how busy she had been trying to keep her mind occupied. 2 years ago. 2 years had passed run away to London to start fresh. To escape all the memories how to live in every street corner and 2 years of building walls around her. Now she was going back and she felt like she might be making a terrible mistake. Emma had worked very hard to create this small blue car was packed with everything she needed. She woke up each morning, made her tea, as she drove out of London. Emma tried to keep her mind focused on the road ahead. It was simple and predictable. But the closer she got to Bath, the more the memories came flooding back. Of her marriage she passed the motorway service station where she and James used to stop for coffee, sliding letters through her door slot. She drove past the exit that led to the restaurant where James had proposed to her on a snowy December evening. Advertisements. Each familiar landmark felt like a small punch to her heart. As she sat with her final cup of steering wheel tighter, she decided to sort through the small pile of envelopes. She reminded herself that she was stronger now than she had been 2 years after advertisement. She had survived the nothing divorce. Interesting or important. She had built a new life. Emma was almost finished when she saw it at the bottom of the pile. Emma had decided to stay with her cream-colored envelope with her name written in handwriting that made her breath catch in her throat, and had always been recognized that writing immediately. When Emma was a child, James's hands were busy with work. Her hands began to shake for long walks and teach her how to bake cookies. Why would James be writing to her after 2 years of accident when she was 22? They had agreed Margaret after the divorce to have no cried and helped her plan the funeral. It was easier that way. Margaret lived in a small stone cottage. Emma's heart began to beat faster as she carefully opened the envelope, beautiful garden afraid of what she might find in lavender. What she found made her world stop fade away as she pulled into the familiar driveway. Beautiful, this place had always felt like home to her. James Michael Harrison came to the door before Emma could even knock. Getting married in 3 weeks. She was 75 years old now, with silver hair and kind blue eyes. Emma stared at the invitation. Her face was lined with wrinkles that came from years of smiling. Unable to believe what she was seeing. She wore a soft purple cardigan that Emma remembered from childhood visits. A small piece of paper with a handwritten note said, pulling Emma into a warm hug. Trembling fingers. I am so glad you decided to come. They sat in Margaret's cozy kitchen, mad, but drinking tea from the same. There is something very important I need to tell you in person. The kitchen smelled like fresh bread and would mean everything to me if you were there. Emma felt safe here. Emma dropped the invitation and note onto her coffee table and stared at them as if they might disappear. Honey into her tea. All the old pain. I know this weekend will not be easy for you. The arguments, sometimes the hardest thing to do is also the right thing to do. The loneliness even when they were in the same room together. Emma looked down at so hard to move past all of that. Steam rise from the hot tea. She had built a new life. I do not even know why I came away from all those terrible feelings. Lucy thinks I am crazy. Why would James want her at his wedding? Margaret reached across the table and took Emma's hand. And why did reading his note make her heart race with something that felt because you were ready to heal? Emma was angry with herself because your heart knows something your mind does not understand yet. She should throw the invitation away and forget about it completely. Margaret told Emma things she had not known before. She picked up her phone and called Lucy. James had been asking their mutual friends about Emma's welfare. Lucy had been there through the worst parts of the divorce. He wanted to know if she was happy and tissues taking care of herself, if she had found peace after their marriage ended. You will not believe what just happened. He never asked anyone to tell you he was asking. What is it, Margaret explained. You sound strange. I think he just needed to know told her about the invitation and the Margaret also told there was silence on the other end of the phone for several seconds. Sophie worked as a nurse at the Children's Hospital. Lucy finally said she had lost both of her parents in a car accident. Emma, when she was only 19 years old. Why would she have no other family and had worked very hard to put herself through nursing school? And why would you put yourself through that kind of pain? She sounds like a good person. Emma stared at the invitation while Lucy continued talking. Margaret replied. Her friend was right, of course. And James seems different with her. Completely crazy. Going to James's wedding would probably be one of the most difficult things she could possibly do. Sometimes pain teaches us how to love better. It would bring back all the old hurt. Emma lay in her childhood bedroom on the second floor of Margaret's cottage. But as Lucy spoke, the same room where Emma found herself during summer holidays as a child. Something deep inside her, with tiny pink flowers still covered the walls, was telling her that she needed to go. The same wooden desk sat by the window where she used to write about what James needed to tell her. Emma stared up at the ceiling in the darkness. Maybe it was the part of her that had never really done when she was a girl with big dreams about her future. Or maybe it was simply time to face the past once and for all, falling in love with a kind man who would never hurt her. She had dreamed of a happy marriage that would last her friend's worried speech. Now, at 30 years old, she understood that life was much more complicated than her childhood dreams. But Emma had already made up her mind. Toward James had been protecting her from something much deeper and scarier than rage. She was going to face James and whatever truth he needed to share, from the fear of opening her heart to love and having it broken once more. But lying there in the quiet darkness of her childhood room, Emma began to wonder if protecting herself had also been preventing her from truly living. The morning of the wedding arrived gray and cloudy, with a gentle breeze that made the trees whisper softly outside Margaret's cottage. Emma woke up with butterflies dancing in her stomach. She had barely slept, spending most of the night staring at the ceiling and wondering if she was making a huge mistake. She chose a simple blue dress from her suitcase, nothing too fancy or attention-grabbing. The last thing she wanted was to stand out at James's wedding. She brushed her brown hair until it shone and put on just a little makeup. Looking in the mirror, she tried to give herself courage. "You can do this," she whispered to her reflection. The wedding was being held at St. Mary's Church, a beautiful old stone building that sat in the center of Bath like a gentle giant. Emma had walked past this church hundreds of times as a child, but she had never imagined she would attend her ex-husband's wedding there. The irony was not lost on her. Emma arrived at the church 30 minutes early, hoping to slip in quietly and find a seat at the back where no one would notice her. But as she stood outside the heavy wooden doors, her courage began to fail her. Her hands started shaking, and her heart beat so fast she could hear it in her ears. Maybe Lucy had been right. Maybe this was a terrible idea. Maybe she should just turn around, drive back to London, and forget this whole thing ever happened. Emma actually took 3 steps back toward her car, ready to leave. Then she stopped again, took a deep breath, and walked back toward the church entrance. This happened 2 more times. Each time, something inside her made her stop running away and face the church doors again. Finally, she forced herself to walk through the entrance and into the peaceful quiet of the old building. The church was decorated with white roses and soft green ivy. Candles flickered on the windowsills, creating a warm, golden light that made everything look magical. Emma stood near the back, feeling very much like she did not belong there. Everyone else seemed to know exactly where to go and what to do. As she stood there feeling lost and uncertain, a young man approached her. He looked about 25 years old, with sandy brown hair and nervous green eyes. He was fidgeting with his tie and looked almost as uncomfortable as Emma felt. "Excuse me," he said politely, "are you here for James and Sophie's wedding?" "Yes," Emma replied quietly. "I am Oliver," he said, extending his hand. "Sophie's brother. You look familiar, but I cannot place where I might have met you." Emma shook his hand. "I am Emma. I do not think we have met before." Oliver's face suddenly showed recognition, then concern. "Emma? You are James's... Oh." He looked embarrassed, as if he had said something he should not have said. "Yes," Emma said gently. "I am his ex-wife. He invited me." Oliver looked even more nervous now. "I am sorry, I did not mean to. This must be very strange for you." "It is," Emma admitted. "But I am here now, so I suppose I will stay." Oliver nodded, then looked around anxiously. "I am supposed to give a speech today, but I am absolutely terrified. I have never been good at speaking in front of people. My hands shake, my voice gets squeaky, and I forget everything I want to say." Emma felt her heart go out to this worried young man immediately. His nervousness reminded her of herself when she had to present design projects to new clients. "Would you like to practice with me?" she offered. "Sometimes it helps to say the words out loud to someone before the real moment." Oliver's face lit up with relief. "Would you really do that? That would be wonderful." They walked together to the small garden behind the church. It was a quiet, peaceful place with old stone benches surrounded by flowering bushes. Oliver pulled out a folded piece of paper from his jacket pocket and smoothed it out carefully. "I wrote it all down," he explained. "But I am afraid it sounds silly." For the next 20 minutes, Emma listened as Oliver practiced his speech. At first, his voice shook and he stumbled over the words. But Emma encouraged him gently, helping him find his confidence. As he spoke about his sister Sophie, his voice became stronger and more sure. Oliver talked about how Sophie had raised him after their parents died, working 2 jobs while going to nursing school. He spoke about her kindness, how she always helped people who were hurt or scared. Then he talked about James and how he had changed since meeting Sophie. "James used to seem restless," Oliver read from his paper. "Like he was always looking for something he could not find. But with Sophie he seems calm and happy. He listens more. He thinks before he speaks. Sophie helped him become the best version of himself." As Emma listened to Oliver's words, she began to see the situation differently. This was not about James choosing someone else over her. This was about 2 people who had found something real and healing together. Oliver's speech painted a picture of a man who had learned from his mistakes and grown into someone better. When it was time for the ceremony to begin, Emma felt calmer than she had all day. She took a seat near the back and watched as the church filled with friends and family. When the music began and Sophie walked down the aisle in her simple white dress, Emma saw a woman who glowed with quiet grace and genuine happiness. James stood at the altar looking more mature and thoughtful than Emma remembered. When he saw Sophie approaching, his face lit up with pure joy. As they exchanged vows, promising to love and support each other through all of life's challenges, Emma found herself genuinely happy for them. At one point during the ceremony, James's eyes found hers across the crowded church. Instead of the pain Emma had expected to feel, something unexpected washed over her. It was peace, warm and gentle and surprising. She smiled at him and he smiled back, and in that moment, Emma knew she had made the right decision to come. The morning of the wedding ceremony and cloudy, all the guests with a gentle breeze that made the trees whisper. It was held in a lovely garden pavilion behind the church. Emma woke up with butterflies dancing in fairy lights and more white roses. She had barely slept. Round tables were set up under the open ceiling and wondering if she was making from a small stage where a three-piece band performed gentle melodies. For her suitcase. Emma found a table near the back corner, hoping to blend in with the other guests. The last thing she wanted was to stand out at James's wedding. Except Oliver. She brushed her brown hair until it shone and put on just a little delicious roasted chicken in the mirror. She tried to give herself warm bread rolls that reminded Emma of the meals Margaret used to her reflection. She ate the wedding was being held a happy couple move from table to table, old greeting their guests sat in the center of congratulations like a gentle giant. James looked handsome in his dark blue suit, church hundreds of times as a child, genuinely happy. She had never imagined she would attend her ex-husband's wedding naturally during their marriage. The irony was not lost on her. Sophie moved beside him. Emma arrived at the church 30 minutes early, often resting gently on his arm. Quietly and find a seat at the back where no one would notice her perfectly. But as she stood outside the heavy wooden doors, her courage began to fail her. Emma was finishing her dessert when she noticed James walking toward her. She could hear it in her ears. Her heart began to beat faster. Maybe Lucy had been right, but not with the old pain. Maybe this was a terrible idea. Instead, maybe she should just turn around, curious about what he might say, and forget this whole thing ever happened. He looked determined but also Emma anxious, actually took three steps back toward her car, important words for a long time. Then she stopped again, took a deep breath, softly as he reached her toward the church entrance. Thank you so much for coming two more times. I honestly was not sure you would. Something inside her made her stop running away and face the church doors again. Emma set down her fork and forced herself to walk through the entrance and into the peaceful quiet of the old building. Your note said it was important. The church was decorated with white roses and soft green ivy. Carefully, as if he was afraid she might run away. Creating a warm golden light that made everything look magical. When he finally stood near the back, his voice feeling very much like she did not belong there. I wanted to tell you how everyone else seemed to know exactly where to go and what to do. I spent 2 years thinking about our marriage and why it failed, lost and uncertain. And I know now that it was because a young man approached her. It was my selfishness. He looked about 25 years old, to really listen to what you were telling me. My habit of thinking only about what I wanted instead of what we both needed. Almost as uncomfortable as Emma watched his face as he spoke. Excuse me, she could see that he meant every word. Are you here for James and Sophie's wedding? She had been married to. The man who had always found ways to blame their problems on circumstances or other people. This James was taking full responsibility for his mistakes. I cannot place where I might have met you. I spent 2 years learning how to be a better person. He continued. I do not think we have met before. I read books about relationships. Suddenly showed recognition. I learned to listen, really listen to what people are saying instead of just waiting for my turn to talk. He looked embarrassed, and Sophie helped me understand what real love actually looks like. Yes, before Emma could respond to what James was saying, I am his ex-wife. She saw Sophie approaching their table. Oliver looked even more nervous now. I am sorry, I did not mean directly to the woman who was now James's wife. It is. Would it be awkward and painful? But I am here now, so I suppose I will James was talking to his ex-wife. Oliver nodded, then looked around anxiously. When Sophie reached them, she smiled. I am supposed to give a speech today, but I am no jealousy in her eyes. No, I have never been good at speaking in front of people. Instead, Emma saw hands shake and my voice gets squeaky and I forget everything I want to say. Joining you. Emma felt her heart go out down in the chair on Emma's other side. I wanted to meet you properly and thank you for coming today. She had to present design projects to James that you are here. Would you like to practice Sophie more closely? She offered. She had a gentle face to say the words out loud to someone, a smile that seemed to come from deep inside her heart. Oliver's face lit up with relief. She was not intimidating. Would you really do that? But she had something better than beauty. They walked together to the small garden that made her lovely to be around. It was a quiet, peaceful place with old stone benches surrounded by flowering bushes. That James has nothing but respect for you. Piece of paper from his jacket pocket and smoothed so much better than the man he was during your marriage. I wrote it all down. He has learned so much from the mistakes he made with you, and those lessons helped him become the man I fell in love with. Emma listened as Oliver practiced his speech. Emma stared at both of them, feeling something very strange happening inside her chest. The anger she had carried him for 2 long years, helping him find his confidence, that had felt so heavy as he spoke about his sister Sophie, was suddenly just melting away like stronger and more sunshine. Oliver talked about how Sophie had raised him after their parents died. They were not trying to hurt her or 2 jobs while going to nursing school. They were just 2 human beings who had found love together and wanted her to be okay. Then he talked about James and how he had changed since meeting Sophie. I forgive you. James used to seem restless. I forgive you completely and totally. Read from his paper. I can see that you have learned and grown, he was always looking for something, and I am genuinely happy that you found someone who loves you the way you deserve to be loved. He listens more. She turned to Sophie. He thinks before he speaks. Sophie, thank you for helping him become a better man. The best version of himself. I can see how much you two love each other. Emma listened to Oliver's words, she began to see the situation differently. Before she could think about what she was doing, James choosing someone else over James. This was
It was
about
not a
two
romantic
people who
hug,
had found
but
something
the hug of
real
someone
and
saying
healing
goodbye
together.
to old hurt
Oliver's
and hello to
speech
peace.
painted a picture of
Then
a
she
man
hugged
who had
Sophie,
learned from
and
his
to her
mistakes
surprise,
and grown
Sophie
into
hugged
someone
her
better.
back warmly.
When it was
As
time
Emma
for the
sat back
ceremony
down,
to begin,
she felt lighter
Emma
than she had
felt
felt
calmer
in
than she
years.
had all day.
The heavy weight
She
that
took
had
a
been
seat
sitting
near
on
the
her
back and
chest
watched
since
as
the
the
divorce
church
was
filled with
completely
friends
gone.
and family.
She felt
When the
free,
music
truly
began
free
and
for the
Sophie
first
walked
time in a
down the
very
aisle
long
in her
time.
simple white dress, Emma saw a woman who glowed with quiet grace and genuine happiness. James stood at the altar looking more mature and thoughtful than Emma remembered. When he saw Sophie approaching, his face lit up with pure joy. As they exchanged vows, promising to love and support each other through all of life's challenges, Emma found herself genuinely happy for them. At one point during the ceremony, James's eyes found hers across the crowded church. Instead of the pain Emma had expected to feel, something unexpected washed over her. It was peace, warm and gentle and surprising. She smiled at him and he smiled back, and in that moment, Emma knew she had made the right decision to come. Emma woke up the next morning in Margaret's spare room feeling completely different from the person who had arrived 3 days earlier. Sunlight streamed through the lace curtains, creating dancing patterns on the flowered wallpaper. For the first time in 2 years, Emma woke up without the heavy weight that had been sitting on her chest like a stone. She took a deep breath and realized she could breathe fully again. She lay in bed for a few extra minutes just enjoying this new feeling of lightness. It was as if someone had been pressing down on her shoulders for 2 years, and suddenly that pressure was completely gone. Emma felt like she could float up to the ceiling if she wanted to. After breakfast with Margaret, Emma decided to take a long walk through Bath's beautiful streets. She had avoided walking around the town during her previous visits because everything reminded her of painful memories with James. But today she wanted to see her hometown with fresh eyes. She walked past the Roman baths where she had taken school trips as a child. She strolled through the Royal Crescent, admiring the elegant curved row of Georgian houses that looked like something from a fairy tale. She wandered through the small streets lined with honey-colored stone buildings and shops selling everything from books to handmade chocolates. Everything looked the same as it always had, but Emma saw it all differently now. Instead of painful memories, she saw beauty. Instead of places that reminded her of her failed marriage, she saw the town where she had grown up and learned to dream. The streets that had once made her sad now filled her with a gentle nostalgia for her childhood and hope for her future. Emma stopped at a small cafe where she and Margaret used to have tea when she was young. She ordered a cup of Earl Grey and a slice of lemon cake, sitting by the window and watching people walk by. Families with small children, elderly couples holding hands, young people laughing together, everyone seemed to be living their own story, dealing with their own joys and challenges. When Emma returned to Margaret's cottage for lunch, her aunt looked up from stirring soup on the stove and smiled with surprise. "You look completely different, dear," Margaret said, setting down her wooden spoon. "Younger somehow. Like a weight has been lifted from your shoulders." Emma sat down at the kitchen table and accepted a bowl of Margaret's delicious vegetable soup. "I feel different, Aunt Margaret. I feel free. I know it sounds strange, but I feel like I can finally breathe properly again." Margaret nodded knowingly. Forgiveness does that to a person. When we hold on to anger and hurt, it becomes like carrying a heavy bag everywhere we go. We get so used to the weight that we forget what it feels like to walk without it. They ate lunch together, talking about Emma's childhood memories and Margaret's garden plans for the spring. It was peaceful and normal, and Emma realized she had not felt this relaxed in years. That afternoon, Emma packed her small suitcase and prepared to drive back to London. She hugged Margaret goodbye, promising to visit again soon, but this time just for the joy of spending time together rather than to heal from pain. The drive back to London was completely different from her anxious journey 3 days earlier. Emma played music she enjoyed and sang along with the radio. She felt excited about returning to her life instead of dreading it. About halfway home, she saw a sign for a scenic viewpoint and decided to stop. The viewpoint overlooked rolling green hills dotted with sheep and small farmhouses. A wooden bench sat at the edge of the parking area, facing the beautiful countryside. Emma sat down and took in the peaceful view, feeling grateful for this moment of quiet beauty. As she sat there, Emma looked down at her left hand. She was still wearing her wedding ring, even though she had been divorced for 2 years. She had kept wearing it partly out of habit, but mostly because taking it off felt like admitting that part of her life was truly over. Now, sitting on this bench overlooking the English countryside, Emma slowly slipped the ring off her finger. She did not feel angry or sad as she did it. Instead, she felt peaceful and ready to let go of the past completely. She held the ring in her palm for a moment, remembering the hope she had felt when James first put it on her finger 5 years ago. Then Emma put the ring in her purse, not to throw it away, but to keep it as a reminder of a chapter of her life that was now closed. She was finally ready to start writing new chapters. When Emma arrived back at her London flat that evening, she found several messages on her phone. One of them made her heart skip with excitement. It was from Thornton Design Agency, one of the most prestigious design firms in London. Emma had dreamed of working there for years but never thought she was good enough to apply. The message said they had seen some of her work online and wanted to offer her a position as a senior graphic designer. The salary was more than she had ever imagined earning, and the projects they described sounded exactly like the kind of creative work she had always wanted to do. Emma stared at the message, reading it 3 times to make sure it was real. Then she looked across her flat at James's wedding invitation, still sitting on her desk where she had left it a week ago. She walked over and picked it up, smiling as she read his handwritten note again. That invitation, which had seemed like such a painful thing when it arrived, had given her the greatest gift imaginable. It had forced her to face her past, forgive the hurt, and finally set herself free to embrace her future. Emma opened her laptop and began typing her acceptance letter to Thornton Design Agency. For the first time in years, her heart was wide open to all the beautiful possibilities that lay ahead. The end.